Hello, and welcome to another edition of Dark Movies with Friends. I'm your host, Scott. This is a very special, fun episode. I'm excited, so let's just dive right in. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm so excited, so pumped for the opportunity to have a guest on my show, and not only a guest, but an actual filmmaker of a found footage movie and TV show. So without further ado, you know from the episode title and the photos and promos that it is Chris Vander Kaay, creator of the movie Ask and the new TV show Found Footage Finds, which airs on Found TV in the beginning of June, specifically June 4th, for the first 2 episodes. I was lucky enough to watch one of the 2 premiere episodes, and it was incredible. I don't just say that to promote Chris, because Chris is such a good dude. It actually is. If you're a deep dive person like me, which you might be because you're here, right? You will love that show coming out in June. And I definitely want to let the interview speak for itself. So I'm going to, this is only going to be a couple minutes of an intro. Outline of the interview, we talk about Chris's movie Ask. We talk about his TV show Found Footage Finds. And then we talk about the found footage and horror movie community in general, and really what he feels is special about the community in specific. And it really is a wonderful dive past just reviewing the movie. I do want to say there's no official review of the movie Ask in this episode, and this is for 2 reasons. One being, I want to let the interview speak for itself. If we have a deep dive with the actual filmmaker, that is, to me, any better than anything I can tell you by myself. And 2, I want you to watch this movie yourself, because this is a subjective film. All movies are subjective, as they are art, but this one in specific, you'll see in the interview, Chris and I are talking about how many different ways you can feel about this ending. And I watched the movie 3 times. I felt probably 3 different ways. That being said, I think you'll see in the interview too, Chris might have different reactions to the ending, and he made the film. So it's a really, really awesome discussion. Chris is such a kind dude for coming on and just being a good person in general. So with that being said, here it is. I hope you enjoy it. I'll be back at the end to wrap things up. Do you want to make more money? Of course, we all do. I'm just joking. That's an ad from the 90s. It's still me. I'll see you guys. Hello, guys. I'm here with Chris Vander Kaay, writer, filmmaker, creator of the movie Ask, and current new project he's working on called Found Footage Finds. Before I introduce Chris and let him give his spiel, I just want to say kind of what I told him before we recorded, that I appreciate that Chris and I struck up conversation months ago when I first watched his movie, and kind of struck up a little bit of a friendship back then, before I was even thinking podcast. So he was definitely on my short list to get him on the show. But Chris, if you want to introduce yourself, please, and then we can get into talking about your projects.
Yeah, well, first of all, Scott, thank you for having me on the show. I'm honored to be, I think, the first guest, depending on the first guest you've spoken to, even if not the first one that airs. My secret plan to pretend to be a decent and approachable human being is paying off in spades for me. Yeah, I guess I would say, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Chris Vander Kaay. I'm an author of several nonfiction books about the philosophy and history of horror film. And more recently, I was a screenwriter for a while, but I wasn't making my own films. And then in 2024, I made my first feature film. It's I guess you would call it sort of a cosmic horror / influencer found footage film called Ask. And then, yeah, like you said, this year, 2025, I am excited to be putting out season 1 of Found Footage Finds, which we may talk about later, but it's basically a found footage recommendation and filmmaker interview TV series. So that's me in a nutshell.
I called the show to my wife, the Found Footage Finds. I said it's a found footage podcast on steroids. What I didn't even tell you before we started is, in my other room, I had to hit pause on a recommendation that I'm in the middle of one, and I won't even say which movie it is to but it's a movie that I added to my list from the episode you let me watch. So it's awesome. But I'm going to get into Ask first, because that's how I met you, and that's how a lot of people first hear of you. And I'll let you tell us where to watch all these. I think I saw Ask on the Fawesome app. If you want to spill where it's located right now, where else you can...
Yeah, so for free streaming, Fawesome is probably the best place. You can rent it on Amazon currently, and it is available at the distributor's website too, POV Horror. You can rent it there. And in fact, I would say if you're going to rent it, if you're not watching it on Fawesome because you're like an I don't like commercials guy, I would say go to POV Horror, because it's cheaper rental there than it is at Amazon. So if you use the platform, I think it's great. But those are the three primary places. I have been told, there have been whispers that it is going to end up on Tubi, but for anybody who has put films on Tubi, getting the word that it's going to happen and then it actually happening, there's often a chasm of time between those two realities. So depending on when you're listening to this, feel free to go over to Tubi and check. But as of this second, it's not available, but it should be soon.
I will say, too, before I get into questions, that Chris is an awesome person to reach out to. Facebook, Instagram, if you have questions, he'll probably get back to you. He's a nice guy like that. That's something that you don't always get from a movie creator. And I'll get into the found footage community in general and what got me into it by the end of our conversation, I'm sure. Question 1 about Ask. Humor is seen throughout the movie. I know some of it is intentional. You could tell. I wrote down the ASMR video. Absolutely hilarious. Just you go, I got to get some shit out there. And you just do. It's hilarious. How much of that is intentional, and how much of that is just your personal self? How much of you was shining through?
Listen, I would love to say that I don't have a ton in common with this guy, because this guy in the movie is he's a trier. He's definitely a trier, but he's mostly a failer until some certain things happen and transpire in his life. But 100%, this movie came from my massive sense of imposter syndrome. In my day job, I work with very wealthy attorneys, business owners, things like that. I'm teaching them things that they don't know how to do that I do know how to do. However, they have become enormously successful in other ways in their lives. So it's constantly very intimidating to be in rooms with some people that are worth, multi-million-dollar people. And I'm like, I'm not in that arena. So there's always a level of imposter syndrome to what I do, even though I'm good at what I do and they recognize it and they're paying me to do it. There's still always a level of, when you're in a room with people who are that much more successful than you financially, you feel like, is this all a scam? Are they going to see through me at some point? So the idea of imposter syndrome led to, I won't spoil a certain element of the movie, but there is absolutely, I think, a physicalization of the idea of imposter syndrome in the movie Ask that comes from my real life. And as for the humor, I would say that one of the things I understood about playing this role, first of all, I was going to be on screen for 90% of the film, if not more than that. And it's going to be mostly a one-hander, because that's what I could afford to do at the time. I knew that there was no way to make a movie that was, on the budget I had, consistently suspenseful enough that someone was going to want to watch 88 minutes of a dude in front of a camera by himself. So what I knew was there had to be a journey. There had to be some strange things that took place, like plot-wise strange. But then there also needed to be a good sense of humor, because it needed to be something else entertaining other than just the WTF moments that were going to come in the story. And also, you have to relate to a character to some degree. One of the refrains I hear a lot that people are frustrated by in found footage films is that everybody's unlikable. And so they're just waiting for them to die because they're so sick of listening to them argue or whatever. And I thought, well, what if you could do the opposite? What if you could have a character that probably shouldn't be likable, in the sense that what he's doing is maybe a little bit shady, or at the very least sort of desperate and sweaty and thirsty. But he's not a super bad guy. He's just bad at what he does. So he's not evil. He's just kind of dumb. And I thought, well, the best way to get that across would probably be to have it be a little bit satirical and a little bit funny. So he's the butt of the joke, in the sense that he's trying very hard to do a thing he's not very good at. And I felt like that can gain me at least some empathy or some appreciative sympathy that will carry them through to the end of the story. So it was absolutely intentional to put the humor in there. I will say I didn't quote unquote script it, because the movie was not scripted. It was just bullet pointed. I didn't write a script for this intentionally, because I knew there were places I would get one time to be able to shoot something and never again. So I can't write a script because what if I don't get the line right? So I just knew what I had to do in the moments that I had them, and I would just sort of execute it in real time. But I knew I needed to lean into the funny in those moments. So
Yeah, I think it all shines through. Even like your natural character, like I think you have a natural charisma that probably comes through in your day job, and it definitely comes through in found footage finds, which we'll get into. That you have I wrote that you seem to have like a natural MC, like you have a natural hosting tone to you, and that comes through in the movie Ask as well. I did write down long monologues, and sometimes in found footage, actually a lot of times in found footage, when there's a lot of long monologues, it allows for the analyzation of the acting to be like, oh my God, there's so many monologues. But I didn't see that with your character. Everything that you wanted this guy to be, as far as I wrote down cringy, I wrote down the word cringy. But like you said, he's just trying to get his slice of the pie. He's no different than he makes several actual points that are, if you think as a viewer, it could hit home. You know, he makes several things that you go, okay, he's cringy, but like those connection moments do happen. So what is your acting background?
It is minimal. I will say I took acting in high school and I think one class in college, but mostly like I didn't try hard. I never tried to have an acting career. Most of the acting that I did was because I had not figured out yet that I wanted to be a writer. So I liked the idea of character and characters and actions. And I assumed, because, you know, when you're young, you just assume when you're looking on screen that the people who are doing the things are the ones that are coming up with it. It takes a while for you to realize that there's an entire process behind people creating the characters before anyone actually acts any of it out. So when I kind of fully realized that what I was interested in was writing and then to some degree directing, I mostly leaned towards the writing for several years. And I had one minor success. I had a film that premiered on the Hallmark Movie Channel back in 2014. It was a Western that I wrote. And then it was just dry as a bone for several years. And that's when I realized I am waiting for permission for someone to say, I like your thing enough to go make it. And I realized if it could potentially be crappy, which I kind of felt like the Western was, I was like, well, why don't I just make it? Because if it's going to end up crappy anyway, at least it's my crap, you know? And so I just decided to make this movie, this first one, which cost $250 to make Ask. But I was like, I would much rather fail trying to do a thing myself than to watch someone else fail trying to execute my thing, or to never have any of my things executed again, you know? And so I just started doing it. And by virtue of the fact that I had no money, I had to be the lead, especially because in this movie, so much of what happened was me reverse engineering from things that are happening in my life. I was flying to Vegas for an event, so I shot footage in Vegas at the event. I actually had to get 6 teeth replaced because my front teeth were in really bad shape. I wrote that in and reverse engineered from, well, how do you tell a story where somebody has really bad, messed up teeth for a certain amount of time and then overnight the next day has brand new teeth? What's interesting about that? Someone was really getting arrested in the parking lot of a grocery store one time when I was there, and so I used that as backdrop for a scene that I was recording. None of those things would have been possible if I hadn't been the lead actor and was able to just literally pull my camera out of my pocket and shoot that scene in that moment, right? Like I never could have done that if I was working with an actor and he wasn't at the parking lot with me when I was, you know, when someone was getting arrested or whatever. So I knew I had to act. And so part of the reason for the bullet points is because when I write a script, I'm very detailed with a script and I work it over a lot. When I'm an actor, I know what my strengths are as a performer. And I can do a pretty good job the second and third take. My first take is really the one that's probably going to get used because that's when it's newest to me. I don't have it all entirely figured out yet. And that's when you get that energy that feels like it's really happening. Because for me, it was. I didn't script it. I just knew the sign points for emotionally what needed to happen in this scene. And then I would just sort of wander towards it in real time. And then, and then clip out all of the shit later. You know what I mean? That's so you can see this.
You have the bullet points of how you want it to go. And it's almost like the what do you want to call it? Guerrilla filming, where it's like, you're perfect for this idea. I was going to ask, the cop scene you mentioned, are you mentioning when you are kind of trying to call them out?
Yep, I'm trying to get attention to some people who are walking by, and in the background you can see a police car is arresting someone. Yeah.
What about when we see the cop lights in your vehicle?
So it was supposed to look like it was a police car that had just pulled up behind me. Yes. So that is just a light that a friend of mine owns. He has a couple of very nice like LED lights that he has for when he's doing green screen setups. And I was over at his house just messing around with the controls one day, and it just started blinking red and blue. And I was like, there are fake police lights on this grid? And he was like, yeah, they've got several of them. There's this one's candlelight, and this one. And so I was like, I need to borrow that light. And I took it, not knowing even what I was going to use it for, just that I knew that there was going to be some element where a cop car or some sort of police presence happens. And then again, I got this thing. I'm going to reverse engineer to figure out how to use it in the story. And then that's how the element of the police, me having an encounter with the police, we'll just call it that. That came about just because I was at my friend's house and I noticed that his light did a special thing. So
I loved that because I knew as a viewer that, not to say that I knew, oh, there's no cop car there, but I knew that it was part of the art, and it was cool it was like, it seemed very real to me. So I needed an explanation.
I kind of tried to own that too, because like in the very next moment where he goes live and he's trying to, it goes live on the phone and he's trying to escape I was holding the light in that sequence because I wanted the character to, at a certain point, it still looks like a found footage movie, but this moment has sort of transcended the reality of found footage because, like, how are police lights flashing inside of the house where he's running away? It's not actually logically possible, but emotionally it makes sense for the moment of the scene. Like, I can't see where the source of this light is coming from. It feels right, even though it's not technically, logically possible,
I think that you had to, as a viewer, and like you said, you added that word cosmic in there. You have to suspend some, like, when he's getting rewarded and he goes, okay, this is just what it is now. We as the viewer also have to bite that bullet and go, it is what it is now. He's not worried about it right now, so we aren't. Like, that's how I watched it.
Yeah, and truthfully, it was very important. I'm glad that you picked that up because it was very important to me to present to the audience, this is how this story is going to go. This is the world. This is the reality of this world, right? If you don't embrace that at that very early point where the character starts to, then you were checked out for the rest of the movie. This is the challenge, right? At minute 30 or so of the film, you have to be on board with what you just said, which is like, if he's not paying attention to this glaring weirdness in his life for some reason, you also have to do that. Like, if you try to be smarter than the movie, then you have missed the point of this movie, which is that when a strange thing happens to you, but that strange thing is positive for you, you don't always investigate it the way that you probably should.
I feel like you have to buy in that there's weirdness in this universe, that in this environment, or he's so mentally unstable that we are seeing what he thinks he's seeing, or, so it's kind of cool. And you had said that before, like, there's no, I don't have any negative remarks, but there's questions at the end, which no spoilers, but I kind of like when there's questions, because if you have me talking and you have two people who watched it talking, I think it was all made up. I think something happened to him. It's fun. It's like, that's probably what you would like.
One of the most important things for me to take away from that movie is that people will have different takes on what actually transpired, what they think it means, whether he was even right with his guess at the end of what he thinks is going on, in the final moments where he's talking about what he just saw. My take is, I feel like I have a very clear vision of what I believe transpired. But I also believe that once you have completed something and put it out into the world, it becomes an entity separate of yourself, right? And there are a lot of people who didn't love that I didn't give them a clearer answer. But I would say, look at it, just take a second, take a step back and recognize that the feeling that you're having is you participating in the story now. If I had told you everything, then the only thing you'd be able to say was liked it, didn't like it. Right now, you're actively participating in what you believe did or did not happen. I have made you a participant in the storytelling in a way that I wouldn't have if I gave you all the answers, And to me, the power of film is the ambiguity that you can have to do that, where 4 different people can watch a movie and all 4 of them can have slightly different interpretations of what they believe transpired. None of them are necessarily wrong, and that allows for the movie to have a life long past the point that they all watched it. Because if I gave you every answer, then at the end, there's nothing for you to talk about those other people that feel differently about it, other than it was good, it was bad. I don't know. For me, that's the power of film, is in your ability to revisit it, your ability to discuss it, and for it to mean different things to different people.
Right. It's art. Right? It's subjective. I watched it in February as a fan of found footage with no intention of ever interviewing anybody, and I had a certain way I felt about it. I watched it twice in the past, couple of days off and on, just writing down notes, and I watched it from a different standpoint. I watched it from a creator's standpoint, like, why did you do what you did? And the movie made more sense to me. You could watch it again and have a different answer than what you had the first time on what you think transpired. So I love things like that. With that being said, and this is like the question I'm excited about with this movie, when you're talking about how detailed you are with the bullet points, okay? Mm-hmm. And I just know this from trying a podcast and editing. When did you know you were done? When did you go? Because it's hard to do what you just said. Okay, it's not mine anymore. It's everybody else's. When did you go, okay, I'm done?
Well, so this will probably not surprise you to know. Found footage films can frequently be shot very quickly because there's nowhere near as much production in the sense of, right, I don't need 3 angles on me from different depths and frames to be able to cut, right? We've all accepted as found footage films that often there's one camera. There's cuts right in the middle of a sequence sometimes to, like, cut down the fat or just suddenly cut away. So it saves you a lot of production time. Now, I knew that. So one of the things that happened was literally up until the point that we delivered it to POV Horror for it to actually go out and be submitted to different venues, I was still shooting pieces. In fact, one of my favorite sequences in the film is one of the last things that was added, which is the jacuzzi drop, where I'm in the jacuzzi pool and I drop down and there's a thing going on behind me. That moment was not in the original cut of the film at all. The original cut of the film was almost 100 minutes long, and I was like, this is so much longer than it should be for a film about one dude talking to a camera. So I just got really I did a super tough cut, and it got down to 72 minutes. And it was like, all the story is there, but it's hollow now. There's no feeling for the character, literally just hitting beats. So I put a little bit back in, and I got up to about maybe 84 minutes. And I was like, it needs more. There's something still, it feels like it's missing. But the stuff that I took out, it deserved to be taken out. Like the stuff I hadn't put back in. I was like, that doesn't belong here. But I still need a couple more minutes. And it was actually talking to my friend, the guy that's in the opening and the closing, that plays the forensic tech. He's also an editor friend of mine. And he was the one that was like, what you don't have in here that they use in found footage films a lot is the way where you the camera will be static, but the way that you frame something makes it scary suddenly. And then so we sort of reverse engineered the scene in the jacuzzi. And I shot that a week before I had a locked picture. So yeah, 6 days before I finally locked it was when we shot that scene. So
do you feel like, is that a good anxiety? Is that that's almost like a self-imposed, okay, I can make this, I could tweak it a little bit. It wasn't
I'll say this, I'm definitely not a perfectionist. One of the things I love about found footage films, in fact, is that I feel like it gets people closer to the unfiltered thing that they wanted to make, because it gets all of the process out of the, not all of, but much of the process out of the way. It allows you to just be like, how much can I just dive into the story that I want to tell? Because none of the rest of this stuff is stopping me from getting to it. So I actually quite editing is fine, but it's not my favorite part of the process. I would love to get through editing as fast as humanly possible, because I think it was Hitchcock that used to say he would storyboard the movie and then he didn't want to go shoot it because he had already made the movie he wanted to make. This was the formality of him going and telling all the actors to get in place and stuff. He was basically done with the creative part of the movie in his mind. That's kind of how I feel about the editing process. It's the reason I like found footage, is because the editing process is much quicker. So I would say that for me, I liked the idea that I was, I'd shot an hour or edited an hour of the movie and I still got to go out and shoot more of the movie before coming back to edit more of the movie, because it felt like I wasn't done with it yet. I wasn't done with the part I enjoyed, the fun part,
I think that you could, musicians talk about this too, when they say, you have a 4-minute masterpiece. Well, how'd you know it wasn't a 3-minute, 30-second, it's well, you just kind of, you have a feeling when you're done, it's or a due date and you go, I'm done.
Frequently your deadline is imposed by someone other than yourself, for sure. But I also have this belief, there's just a ton of people that are peddling all kinds of, here's the structure you have to have for a story, or here's the way things have to be shot, all these rules. And the rule that I've always abided by was more how they say in nature, animals are the size they are because biologically the structure of them can't exist if they're too much bigger or too much smaller, right? Mm-hmm. A bumblebee doesn't fly if it's twice as large as it is. It's just impossible biologically for it to happen. There's something to me about a filmmaker having an instinct to know what his thing needs to be. And it's just a process of sort of feeling it out until it gets there. And like, not all films are the same, not all genres are the same, not all filmmakers are the same. So that's always going to be different for every movie. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I'm writing a book right now that should probably be out pretty soon. It's called Make Your Movie Now, feature filmmaking using creativity in less than $500. The premise being, if you don't have much money, here's a good way to reverse engineer making a movie for no money. But most of the advice I give is about figuring out the logistics of executing it more than like, here's how to make a good movie. Because I think good movies have been made in so many different ways that I don't trust when you tell me that this is the best way to do a thing. What you're telling me is that's the way that you think is best. What I'm telling you is just logistically, here's how it gets done. Use that, and then couple that with what your instincts are as an artist to get the closest to the thing you want, you know? Because like, there's a lot of art that is confrontational to many people. They don't like it. They don't understand it. That doesn't mean the art was wrong. It means it wasn't for that person. And so my whole thing is like, movies are somewhat a commodity, but also they're somewhat an art. And like, when we're working on budgets this low, it gets to be more of an art because it's not as much of a commodity. Like, I get to do all kinds of strange shit with my found footage film because I don't have to make that much money. It was profitable after the first quarter of being just on POV Horror. That's how little this movie cost to make, you know? So I can be more daring with it than other people can when they're trying to spend somebody else's $17 million.
I love found footage for that reason. For like, you talk to directors, actors, writers, anybody involved with found footage at all, and nobody says, I love the money I get from it. You know, there's a community build within found footage that I connect to. I grew up in the punk music scene.
Mm-hmm.
The acceptance of you're different, you think a little bit different, you might have a little bit of an edgy brain. You're not trying to fit the box. I think found footage fits that mold. I'm 36 now. It took me to like 34 to figure that out about found footage, but we can get into that. But now I'm so glad you made Ask. I'm so glad that you're willing to talk about it and promote it. But now I'm really excited because we can switch gears. You can take off your filmmaker hat, even though you made this, and put on your fan hat, and we could talk about your show, Found Footage Finds, which I am honored that I got a chance to watch an episode. It was cool. I felt like one of the big shots, one of the late night guys that got the preview. And like I said, I have a recommendation from the episode you gave on In the Other Room on pause for when we're done. So if you want to talk about what it is first before I get into questions about it and where to, you know, the process and where to find it and all those things.
Sure. So while it will end up on multiple platforms, I was lucky enough to connect with the people at Found TV, which is like the go-to home for found footage filmmakers to have their movies. And you can work straight with them, which is great. In a lot of other places, you have to submit through other means. You have to have a connection or something like that. But Found TV really tries to connect directly with all their found footage filmmakers and get their work out directly. I was able to speak with them, and I was lucky enough that they were interested in this series, which is ultimately, it's a documentary series, but it's a documentary series shot in found footage style. And the reason for that is because it's about found footage movies solely. And it's a recommendation series, meaning we choose one subgenre for each episode, and we just focus on that subgenre. What movies are in it? What were the influences that created it? What are some real life circumstances, historically, philosophically, aesthetically, that have influenced it? But then also talk to a few of the filmmakers that have made entries in this subgenre and have them talk a little bit about the movies, some of the good memories of them, what they're about. And ultimately for me, what it is I realized, and you said it earlier, that we're both members of the same group on Facebook, which is just a found footage group. Most of what those groups are is someone saying, what movie should I watch? Or, hey, I just watched this movie and here's what I think of it. And I realized, well, this is literally like 500,000 people on Facebook that just like to gather to tell each other what they just watched or to ask for something that someone else just watched. I'm like, why isn't there a show that makes it a concept, gives it a shape, kind of like I did? I think I want to say it's 6 segments in the show, 6 clear segments divided by 4 filmmaker interviews, and then just create that so that people have a place they can go where this is one dedicated episode will tell them everything they want to know about this subgenre of found footage. And so that's what I did. I just decided to do that. I had no idea whether or not it would be well received by the filmmakers, if they'd have any interest at all. And then I ended up finding many more people than I thought I would, to the degree that there's no way I'm going to be able to fit all the interviews in season 2 when we talk about it. So many people responded and wanted to do clips that I now have the opposite problem, which is like, I now have to choose who's going to make the cut. And that's worse. I would rather not have enough and have to like dig around for one more than to be like 9 people want to do this and I can only fit 4. But that's the central premise of the show is like, if you're a found footage fan, this provides hopefully as exhaustive a list of whatever subgenre we're talking about that week as you've ever seen, with some voices talking about the movies that they made. And then also just giving you some sense, because I feel like there's not much of this in the marketplace, is a sense of the history of found footage. I don't think people take it seriously enough as a genre that they talk about the idea of the historical significance of certain kinds of movies, what led to it, why this style came about when it did, what things were happening in the world that might have caused this to become a phenomenon. And so that whole opening segment is just for that. So my hope is it's a mix between a scholarly thing and a fan thing, like maybe a half and half.
I felt that watching it. I felt like, and I wrote little notes of just how I was feeling while watching, just as I'm on Found TV and I click it on. What would I feel? I felt like it was a good break of, say I watched one of the worst ones you can think of. I'm talking like gore, but this is a nice, like almost like a palate cleanser. Let me learn about what I just watched.
Right. Yeah. Let me try and contextualize the monstrosity I just put in my.
Let me humanize it. Let me realize that these people are just actors or whatever. But it was a good feeling. I love learning. I'm a teacher, like you said. You have teaching in your background too. So we're probably both lifelong learners. So. Why TV show? Why not another avenue? What made you think this needs to be a visual? This needs to be something I want to make like a series?
So I think it's twofold. If I'm being 100% honest, part of it is that I probably could have made this a podcast, but I don't know that I'm interesting enough to just listen to straight, to just hear me talk about it.
I don't know what you're implying there. No, I'm just joking.
I'm only talking about me. Remember, when I'm pointing one finger, there's 3 more pointing back at myself. No, but I genuinely, it was more that like I knew what I wanted to say. It was going to be scripted. And I tried to think, is that interesting? A scripted podcast about this, just in an audio form, is that interesting enough? And for me, it wasn't. It might be for other people. Who knows? I might have some people be like, yeah, I put that on to just listen to you and I don't ever look at your face. I just do it while I'm, folding laundry or whatever. And that's fine. But for me, I'm a filmmaker. I want to see it. I want to watch it because there's also elements of the show that I think do transcend just the information that I'm providing. In some sequences, I'm showing images from certain films that I'm not actually talking about, but that do tie thematically into what I'm discussing. There's an episode about zombies, in fact, where I show clips from some movies that I'm not having the conversation about. I'm discussing the historical significance or philosophical difference, but I'm showing a clip from a found footage movie or from a found footage trailer, and I have the name of the movie on the screen so that as you're watching, you might be looking at that and going, oh, I don't actually know what that found footage movie is. Let me jot that down. I didn't talk about it because I was focusing on something, but I still put that up on the screen because the goal here was I'll probably end up name checking between 15 and 18 movies proper in the episode. But it's probably more than 18 movies that ultimately get name checked in the show. It's like clips being played on the screen or the filmmaker mentioning an inspiration for them. So like you end up getting a lot more than just the number of straight recommendations. And then literally at the end, I think I even shout out, I shout out the Letterboxd list where I say, here's how many of these movies are on a Letterboxd list. If you go, follow me on Letterboxd and follow this list. Because for me, the goal was like, I wanted to create something that felt like it came from pieces of other places and then put together in a different format, right? So like the conversational tone of podcasts, the stylistics of a YouTube channel in the sense of like the clearly delineated segments and a dedicated host. But then I also liked the aesthetic design of found footage movies, like make it look like a found footage film on top of that. And the only way to have all of these pieces amalgamate and make sense together for me was to create a series out of it. And if it was going to be a series, I was like, I don't want to make a YouTube series. I don't want to be a YouTube creator. I just made a movie making fun of them. I can't just immediately dive in and just become one of them. So I thought, well, I know places that would be interested in it theoretically. And so I just decided to ask them because while I say they'd be interested, I don't actually know because I don't know anybody that's making documentaries about found footage. The point is you make fake documentaries. That's the whole goal. I was making a real documentary. So I was like, well, I guess I better check with some people. But the people at Found TV were super excited. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it because the worst that happens is it's not a huge success. But I feel like as long as people are willing to give it a try, all the people that want the recommendations and want to know behind the scenes stories and want to hear from the filmmakers, they get all of that from one place now. So that was the reason I kind of took influence from all of those places and just sort of jammed them together into one beast.
I loved that you took the extra step, and this was presented like it was a Screen Life. You were in what I would consider an old school tab, the green, red, yellow, like the 1990s elementary school. That's when I was in elementary school, like what the internet looked like back then. But it was so cool to see you pull up. It's almost like, and I love that because you did your thing, and it's almost like, okay, hey, I'm back. And that's why I said U of A hosting, and maybe you're right. Maybe that's perfect for TV. Maybe that's perfect for film. You have a hosting charisma about you that translates well. So I'm glad you did this. What other subgenre should we expect? You said Screen Life and then zombie. Would it be like creature feature?
So I'll tell you what. I will give you 3 of the 5, and I will keep 2 of the 5 secret. Because I can tell you 2 of them, because one you've already watched, and the other one. So the first 2 are actually the first week that it premieres, June 4th. We're premiering 2 episodes. The first one is Bigfoot. And then the second one is the episode that you watched, which is Screen Life. So those are the 2 episodes that are premiering the series. Then the third episode, which will be out the second week, is Zombies. So those are the 3 that I will tell you. And I will keep the final 2 a secret only because I still want people to tune in and get some sort of a surprise. So I don't want to give but I will tell you this because you just hinted at it, which is the Screen Life style was for the Screen Life episode. The other episodes are sort of designed to stylistically match whatever it is I'm talking about in each episode. Well, within the budget of what I don't want everybody to get too excited about the Bigfoot one actually having Bigfoot in it. I couldn't afford a Bigfoot, but like the idea is that like the place that I'm in and the place that I'm talking during is more themed to each episode. So the zombie one, I actually went to this construction site of all these unfinished houses because there's all these places that just look like they're unfinished and they've got like these triangles, like spray painted on the front door with instructions. They kind of looked a little bit like a zombie apocalypse area to me. So I went and shot there for that one. And the Bigfoot one, obviously you could probably guess where I went to for that one, but I won't give any details. But like the premise was, if it's supposed to look like a found footage movie, it should look like the kind of found footage movie I'm talking about. So Screen Life has that design, Bigfoot has that design, Zombie has that design, and I didn't have a ton of money, but in the places where I was able to do something interesting stylistically, I tried to do that so that it matched the kind of movies I was talking about.
I loved it. It kept me interested as like a super fan to be like, oh my God, look, he's even doing it's a great add-on. You're already on, it's a visual, so why not add that in? So let's see what I got, because you answered some because you're a good speaker.
While you're looking at your other questions, I will say one of the things I really appreciate is that's as someone who is not an actor and who I believe, though I've never been tested, I believe myself to be somewhere on the spectrum. I have always struggled with nonverbal communication with other people, whether I'm understanding people properly, whether they're understanding me properly. So every time someone tells me that they liked my performance, or B, that they think that I'm a good presenter, it means a lot to me because I have to work very hard to feel like I'm effectively communicating with other people, because I'll be honest, I don't know. I can look at my face and feel like it's painted all over there. And I'll have other people tell me, I don't know what's going on in your brain, man. So it means a lot to me to know that all the hard work I did to try and make sure that my face is properly expressing the things that I'm feeling and thinking is working. So that means a lot to me. So thank you for saying that.
I am so happy you just opened Pandora's box for me, because as an educator, and this is like where I was heading questions-wise anyways, because now we've talked your movie, we've talked your show. I want to talk to you about the community and what the found footage community means, like for our last little bit. For me personally, I suffer with depression, anxiety, my whole life, but I quit drinking alcohol 9 years ago, and yay, but you have to feel things then, so I learned how to cope certain ways, but really struggling about a year or so ago, and I don't really know, it might have been Blackwell Ghost, it was maybe Blair Witch again from my childhood, it was found footage in general. The anxiety I felt connected with the anxiety on the screen. And there was I felt a bond that was intangible. And that led me to like the Facebook group that led me down a path of meeting people that share this. I don't even know. To me, it's bigger than the genre. It's helped me personally get out of a funk. I find that I'm not as weird as I think, or I'm just as weird as a lot of other people. How about that? Let's word
Yep,
it like that.
exactly. It's not that we're not weird. It's that we're all equally weird. Yeah.
And it's like, and like I said, there's connections with like the punk rock community.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a sports kid growing up. I love sports, but I was not a athlete. So my connection was watching like underground comedy, listening to punk rock band. I love people that tested the boundaries of what was supposed to be socially acceptable as art. And Blair Witch did that for me. I'm like, oh my God, they killed these kids. Like I remember being young going, but they didn't. And it was like, I had like these butterflies in my stomach.
It's like they got away with something, right? Like they fooled you, but they didn't get in trouble for fooling you. It was actually considered an accomplishment as opposed to something you should punish someone for.
So is it horror in general that you feel this community is built on? Do you feel it's different within the found footage community? What is your take on the passion that people have?
Yeah, so I think so. I'll say the first thing I'll address is the idea that you said that there's something that draws us together as found footage and horror fans. And I think part of it has to do with, and this is, I think, counterintuitive to what a lot of people think, but I actually believe this. It's not true for everyone, but I sense within the larger horror and found footage community that there is a deeper sense of empathy than there is for people who are not fans of horror. And it sounds weird because they're like, oh, you're watching these awful movies. But the thing is, we don't watch awful movies because we're interested in seeing awful things happen to people. We watch them because it helps us to understand people at the edges of experience, right? In ways that you don't get to experience in real life, right? Like, I don't know what it's like to be stabbed in the stomach. And honestly, I don't want to know what it feels like. But I like the idea of knowing how to be prepared for it, how to cope with it, what comes in the aftermath of it. And when there are things that are not socially acceptable, horror movies are willing to explore them and to explore the extrapolations of what happens when something that's socially unacceptable does take place. And that's, I think, healthy for a society to understand that. Yes, there should be a responsibility for the way that you do it, but it serves the same purpose that telling children Grimm's fairy tale stories were, or showing them those weird pictures of kids burning their hands on the, burners on the stove so that they don't do it. There's a sense of it being a guiding force in some ways as much as it is a scary force, like where we can all recognize there is a universal experience to the things that we fear, and there's nothing wrong with feeling fear. Don't run away from fear, understand fear. You still feel fear, but you can have an encapsulation of it, and it doesn't become something that pushes you away. It's something that you have to embrace. What's that expression about bravery isn't not being scared. It's doing something even though you feel scared. I feel like if you avoid everything that's scary, then you'll never have the opportunity to be brave, right? So there's something about horror that taps into that for me. But then you said something I think is interesting, which is you use the comparison of punk rock music as an equivalent. And I think that is true, but I also think of community theater when I think of found footage, in the sense that community theater is what democratized theater for people. It used to be you had to spend a bunch of money and get dressed up and go to these very few places that had the money and the ability to put on a show, right? So it belonged to the rich people. It belonged to the higher ups and to the art house people. Well, community theater said, you know what? Shakespeare's free. Why don't we just put it on in our backyard and you can come watch it? And I maybe don't understand everything there is to know about Shakespeare, and neither do you, but we can share the learning of Shakespeare by just putting this friggin' thing on in a community theater here in the lobby of a high school or whatever it is, right? And the reason I like that is because it democratizes storytelling in a medium that has long been extremely expensive. And what that does is it also opens it up to marginalized voices that have never had a seat at that table before, right? And I'm not just talking about women filmmakers and filmmakers of diverse ethnic backgrounds, but I'm also talking about people who are neurodivergent, people who have disabilities, people who often struggle to have their voice heard in any capacity in an art form because, how does anybody want to spend the money to make a movie about a guy in a wheelchair? Because that's not sexy and fun to watch, right? Well, it's an experience I would like to have, actually, if I had that opportunity and I knew that the person making it was someone who understood that journey and could tell me what it was like. I would be interested in that, but you haven't given them the chance. Well, in found footage, they have that chance because it costs very little for them to be able to do it here, as opposed to having to get somebody to put up $45 million to tell that story. So this democratizes not just the ability for everybody to make a film, but for communities that have long been barred from the opportunity to do so, to do that. It's the reason that I'm writing the book, honestly. Like, no offense, straight white dudes of the similar age to me, but like, you've had plenty of swings at the bat. I'm making this book so that anybody from any background has the opportunity to do what I did on that same financial level and hopefully get their work out there and have their unique perspective seen by the world for very little money.
It's a community that I feel has similarities, like you said, community theater, small grassroots DIY, anything. It just reminds me of that, the feeling you get where you're getting away with something. We're not supposed to be making this film. Like, we're not the Hollywood guys, you know? And it's like, oh man, I've always been the underdog guy myself. I've always connected with the underdog guy. And I feel like even in that group, which, by the way, that Facebook group, I think I joined in October of 24, and it was maybe 1,000 people. And it's, like you said, 600. I mean, that's insane. And the number of people like you in it, filmmakers, actors, writers, that are legit, like, we have movies out there. That's so awesome to me, because tell me, what forum is Brad Pitt going on talking to people? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Not that I even want to talk, but it's like, you know, it's just like, if I catch someone going, I fucking hated that. That was so fucking terrible. That movie was in that group. I try to go, hey, they're in here. Not that you would care, but but like, as in, like, actually talk to them. Like, don't just say you hated it. Why'd you hate it? Like, maybe you could, you know, it's a cool thing that outside of, like, I don't know if people in that group even know that. Like, that's why I try to make that comment. I'm like, hey, so-and-so's in here. Ask them, you know?
I think that there is something to be said for the idea that this is a double-edged sword, right? Having direct access to filmmakers. Because there are some people who understand and appreciate why that's valuable. And then there are other people who think, if I have access to you, it means I can talk to you the way I would talk to anybody else in life without fear of repercussions, the way I do with anybody that's in any group anywhere. And it's frustrating to me. I haven't run into it, but I've watched other filmmakers that have pulled back from the public eye because of the sense that some members of the community will feel overly familiar enough to be incredibly rude to someone because they think that's the way that you just talk to people. And the only critique I would ever give to people who are in groups like this is to please try to remember that feeling like you're connected to a filmmaker or to a film does not give you ownership of the art that they created, right? In the sense that when you critique a movie, if you didn't like it, that's fine. But when you say, here's what you should have done, what you're doing is you're creating a negative space inside of their work. You're saying you did something wrong in the work that you wanted to create. If you don't like what I created, I'm fine with that. But do not tell me that I made the thing I made wrong. I know what I wanted to make and I made it. You just didn't like it. That's perfectly acceptable to me. But please don't, like, the cinema sinsing of the world has become very frustrating to me, where people watch a movie and they feel like they need to outsmart it. They need to think of an idea for if this character had just done this thing that I thought of, everything would be fine. Well, you're not really participating in a movie at that point. You're trying to solve a quiz. And you can get those over on BuzzFeed. But this is a movie, you know? Experience it in the level that they've given it to you. Yes, everything in this movie is not realistic. No film is ever realistic. That's sort of the point. We're watching it because it's not realistic. This is not the real world. Even in found footage, which purports to look like reality, we would be bored out of our minds if all we watched was actual footage that actual people had shot. They're fucking boring. Pardon my French. Like, there's a level of fantasticness that you have to add to it in order for it to be interesting. And so I always just say, like, for me, it's not about, like, not having access to filmmakers. It's recognizing that filmmakers are actually artists. And you can disagree with liking or disliking their work without, like, negating the idea that what they did was in some way incorrect. You know, that's the thing that's, for me, is frustrating.
Almost like a wish that you didn't make it or something. It's just it's a bad energy. And I will say that the majority of the community is not like that.
Right.
The majority
100%.
of the community is in our camp of, wow, he did X with X amount of money.
Yeah, and that's why I just want to be clear. I have not had those interactions myself.
Right.
I've actually been really lucky, and maybe it's because people connected with my movie in a different way than they did with others. I've only ever watched it happen to other exchanges, and I'll go in and try to be positive in those exchanges. And like somebody said, oh, that's 88 minutes I won't get back. And I think I want to say maybe it was Dylan Brown, the director of Tahoe Joe. He responded to something I thought was really funny. He said, just so you know, even if you liked it, you wouldn't get those minutes back.
Oh,
and I was like,
there you go.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, Dylan.
Hey, no matter what, you watched it. Like,
yep.
I'm sorry you watched it. Like,
yeah, like you had the option at any point. If you didn't like it, you had the option at any point to stop it. You could have left. Like, I didn't keep you here.
Said with art, there's nothing wrong with getting on there and going, that's not my cup of tea. That's innocent. You're just saying, glad you made it. I'll share it, whatever. But I'm not. For a lot of people, creature features are like that. They want. Maybe they just want serial killers.
Yeah.
Or maybe for some people, the serial killers are not the thing, and they want the creature feature.
Yeah.
So it's like.
And I mean, and truth be told, it's the reason I created the show, because there's 5 episodes in the first season. Each one's about a different subgenre. In all likelihood, people will probably watch all of them, but they're not going to watch all of the movies from all of the episodes because they might not be a zombies guy. And that's fine. Like, I literally call out in the show, not everything is for everybody, but this show is for everybody. So there's going to be stuff on here you don't care about. That's fine. Just walk past it and go to the next thing, but let people enjoy what they enjoy. And I would also say, if you watch a movie and it brings up such a powerful emotion in you that you were like, this is what should have happened, then guess what? I'm not asking you to not talk about it. I'm saying, you know what? It sounds like you've got an idea for how you would have done this. Go do this. Go make a movie. You know that if you didn't like my movie, it only cost me $250. You've got $250 probably. Go make the movie that does the thing you wish mine did. And then that movie will exist. There's a great Toni Morrison quote, a fantastic author. She said, if there is a book that you wish to read and it doesn't exist, you need to write it. Right? So for me, it's like, don't critique the thing for not being the thing you wanted. If the thing you wanted doesn't exist, this is the only genre of movie where you can go, well, I can fix that, and just go fix it. You know what I mean?
I'm, again, thankful that you decided to join me. I know you're getting your show out there. I'm so glad. Found Footage Finds is coming out on Found TV June 4th, you said?
Yep.
And it's worth it, guys. If you're watching this long in, you are a found footage fan, and you probably like the deep dive stuff. This show it's right up my alley, so it's probably right up your alley. I'm speaking right to that Facebook group, and those people that are constantly like, I want to know deep dive stuff. Well, there's people out there trying to give you that. So, Chris, thanks for hanging with me today.
That's been fantastic, man. I appreciate it so much. And I will also say, if you like Found Footage Finds and you haven't seen Ask, go check out Ask. It's less of a commitment of time, and you might enjoy it more. Who knows?
All right, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
There you have it, guys. That's this week's episode of Dark Movies with Friends featuring Chris Vander Kaay. Many thanks to Chris for coming on. Such a kind person, such a cool person to talk to and get to meet. I'm thankful and grateful for that opportunity. Please check out Chris's projects. Movie Ask. It can be found on POV Horror. You can rent it on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on Fawesome App for free with ads. And you can now watch it on Tubi for free with ads as of yesterday. TV show Found Footage Finds premieres on Found TV on June 4th, the first 2 episodes, with 3 more episodes coming out following. Thank you guys for coming. You guys are incredible. I appreciate you guys. Let's go find some footage. Peace!